Now for something completely different. There may be a news analogy in here. There's probably a prize if you can find it. This is a good book. I didn't write it. It's all about cold and its influence on our history and our planet, Arctic explorers, all sorts of things. Reviewing it in the New York Times, Mary Roach said, "To understand cold is to understand the world." This is true. But I wondered, what about artificial refrigeration? And what I'm going to argue is to understand refrigeration is to understand the world we made. So every bite, squeeze, slice of Kraft cheese at some point in its life passes through this underground warehouse in Missouri. It's an industrial cheese cave, if you will. And it is part of a vast global network of temperature-controlled warehouses. And so I became interested in the idea that there's this vast network of man-made winter out there. And no one has mapped it. The USDA does a census monthly of what's in cold storage, but no one has really analyzed this. So I decided to study the national production of cold space. And I've been writing about it, interviewing people about it. I am partnering with the Center for Land Use Interpretation to put together an exhibition about it next year. I've also been teaching a research seminar on it at Columbia, the architecture department. With my students, I've been looking at the evolution of artificial refrigeration, both to understand how we arrived at the system that we have, but also to find design inspiration in the ideas we discarded and the routes we didn't take. We've been looking at the cryosphere in a variety of locations and scales. A supermarket, for example. When the self-service concept was introduced in 1916, there were 3 companies that promoted it. Shopping cart companies, DuPont for cellophane, and the refrigeration companies. But the self-service concept, combined with the car and domestic refrigeration, actually really reshaped the American landscape, and it really changed our relationship with food. The 20th century is the century of refrigeration. It's also the century of disconnection from seasons and place. Yeah, so I don't know, neither of these are mine, but that's an American flag. The domestic refrigerator is a interesting site to look at when you're talking about the social shaping of technology, for example. So there's a fascinating story, which I'll let you Google, about how the refrigerator got its hum and became part of the domestic soundscape. It also changed our relationship with food. Now, this is a set of design prototypes by a South Korean designer designed to save food from the fridge and help us rethink about where it came from and where it likes to live. Food is breathing, you know, it's not a dead thing in a box. Retail and consumption were changed by refrigeration, so was production. First mobile refrigeration was meat, a high-value commodity. And meat going mobile really changed everything. It changed the geography and economics. You get the stockyards. You get the consolidation today of all of our meat into the hands of 4 or 5 companies. Then you get the change in diet. Economies of scale mean meat is cheap, and we have all the byproducts which go into processed food. Same story with bananas. In 1899, a banana was so rare that Scientific American had to publish instructions. By 1914, towns were legislating against dropping banana peel because it was such a hazard. In between, you get refrigeration. You also get the United Fruit Company and decades of civil war in Central America. And you get these strange places called banana ripening rooms, where thousands of pounds worth of bananas are subjected to temperature and atmosphere control so that they believe they're in Ecuador. The Envirotainer and the rise of sushi and the corresponding decline of the bluefin tuna also can be ascribed to refrigeration, invented in 1971 by Japan Airlines. And then in the 80s, with the microprocessor becoming ubiquitous, you get refrigerated containers, and that really changes everything. So now you get salmon being fished off Norway, taken to Guangzhou to be de-pinboned, and taken back and sold in England. We have a special name for refrigeration for human beings. We call it air conditioning. And we wouldn't be here without that. Sunbelt cities, skyscrapers, and summer blockbusters, all due to air conditioning. And finally, also there's the sort of atlas obscura of refrigerated space. So this is the world's largest climate testing facility. It's in Florida, obviously, you can tell. It's used for testing planes in super cold conditions. Not to be outdone, the US Army runs a refrigerated permafrost tunnel, top left. And then you have my favorite, that's a lipo bank on the bottom left. And then you have my favorite, which is the National Ice Core Library, where we store the records of previous climates that we will never see because we're so busy spending energy to make a man-made winter.